You can either go here or you go beside the chair. We can move the chair.
No, I got some. Thank you.
I mean, so you can either go up or I can bring it down.
What's the time here?
Good afternoon. Good to have you here. Let's hear these words of grace and comfort. Dying, Christ destroyed our death. Rising, Christ restored our life. Christ will come again in glory. And as in baptism, Jerry put on Christ, so in Christ may Jerry be clothed with glory. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and I am life. Those who believe, who put their trust in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and trusts in me shall never die. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I hold the keys to life and death. Because I live, you shall live also. Friends, we are gathered here to praise God this afternoon and to witness to our faith as we celebrate, and we want to celebrate the life of Jerry Hamilton. We come together in grief. We're going to miss him. He was a big part of our life, and acknowledge our human loss. And we come here to ask God to grant us this place, a safe place of grace, so that in our pain we may find comfort, in our sorrow, hope, and in this death, resurrection. And so I invite you to sing with all your heart, and I'm going to invite you to stand if you're able to sing 10,000 Reasons together. If you're able, please stand. You don't have to.
Time has come, still my soul will sing your praise.
Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this place. We thank you for the gift that Jerry has been in our lives. So many words have touched our soul. So many actions have touched our heart. We thank you for the witness he has been with his family and in his career, but most especially the witness he's been with Deanna and the wonderful marriage they have and have had, and that God, that soul that was in between them, that love. We thank you for that witness. Help us to celebrate his life, and help us always to be a people that learn to share in that way. We pray this in and through the power and the love of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Please be seated. I'm going to invite you to read together here the 23rd Psalm. We're going to read it together. So let's give this a try here. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. You know, one of the first times I met Jerry was right here in this spot. Jerry, if you knew him, he had some long legs. And sometimes, for some reason, a couple of times when I first got to know, I tripped over him several times, his legs. So, but he was always so gracious about it. So it's good to share stories. And we have Steve, who's going to come up and share now. Right over here, Steve. And so we're going to start with some friends. So if you have a story to share, Steve, I think you're a friend of Jerry's, right? Not an enemy. Here you go.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for being here. It's something of a pleasure myself to think back over the 63 years since Jerry and I first met. We lived in Cheney, and he had just been married for a year, and he and Deanna were there living in a nice little apartment off campus. I was still single at the time, but Jerry and I were both preparing to enter into our first years of teaching at the same elementary school on Fairchild Air Force Base just west of Spokane. We commuted from Cheney. A year later, I was married, and I sort of inherited their neat little apartment a block off campus. Deanna was ready to teach, and she started teaching, and we were in our second years, and time went by. They decided after a bit that they'd like to go to Hawaii, so they signed on with the education department, I guess it was, whatever, and moved out, and we really missed them for a while, and then finally they decided they'd be better off to return to their native roots in Spokane, and so they did, and we loved to reunite with them when they came back from Hawaii, and families were starting to grow with both of us, and then I continued on in school. I was taking night classes at Cheney to get my master's degree, so we stayed on there, and our first two children were born. But going on, I moved to Moses Lake to take a job with the government there in the Job Corps program. And I remember one time, I think Deanna had gone on to Europe one summer with a girlfriend, and Jerry came down to see us there, and then through the years we had many districts visits across state from when Jerry would come over to the coast. And one memorial time I remember is when we had a few years after I finally moved on. Then I moved over to the coast where I got a counseling job, Highline School District, where we lived in Des Moines, and Jerry had gotten a recreational vehicle, camper, and I had a trailer by that time. It was in the, well, I guess it would be the mid-60s, and so I remember one time we took a week-long trip together, took the ferry boat over to Vancouver Island and the families, and we camped out over there, and had a great time seeing Victoria and all those interesting places. Jerry was, of course, in selling insurance by that time, and so we remained in Des Moines for almost 30 years. We'd touch base off and on when Jerry would come to the coast, or we'd go to Spokane. And then I'm trying to remember things a little bit. I have a little bit of a memory lag, which happens when you reach my age. But time went by, and Jerry would come out. We developed a place on an island in Puget Sound too that we moved to. It was about a 4-year project, brushing and burning, and Jerry came out there and visited a couple of different times and watched that progress. We retired out there in 1996, and then we sort of kind of joined in a way them, as they were snowbirding at that time down to El Centro in California, and we decided to do the same, and so we went snowbirding down there at another spot at the Desert Hot Springs, and we got together down there a couple of different times down at La Quinta and Art Festival. But later, back in Washington State, Jerry took a master of ceremonies kind of on the 50th wedding anniversary that we had up in Snohomish. And then in more recent years, health problems arose on both sides of things, and my wife, and who passed away last year, and with Jerry and Deanna, and we had started having problems that people get. But I really loved Jerry. He was just like a brother to me, and it was somehow a strange combination. But I really, I'm glad to see that he has so many old friends and family here today. So thank you all again for coming, and
Thank you,
best
sir.
of luck.
Thank you. Great job. Appreciate it. Sir, any other friends who'd like to share? You can do it from your seat, or come on up. Here you go. Have you come straight here.
My name is Les Dunn. I'm married to Jerry's sister, Mary Ann. We were not married until later in our lives, so I missed about the first 61 years of Jerry's life, something I regret. But a few things have happened since then that, together with Jerry and Deanna, that I would like to share with you. When Jerry and Deanna retired, they bought a motorhome and toured the western United States and southwest United States. And Deanna would write home to us. Jerry wasn't a real good letter writer, but Deanna would write home to us and tell us what adventures they had encountered in this particular week and month of their journey. And after a while, we began to realize that we always heard from Deanna, but never heard from Jerry. So I wrote a letter back and said, "Whatever happened to Jerry?" And so he writes me a letter that I can't remember the exact wording, but basically it was, "Help, help, help. Deanna dumped me off at this rest stop in Texas, and I'm desperate." So I got on a dollar bill and I watered it up as tight as I could and straightened it out again and watered it out again as tight as I could, and did that 10 or 12 times and sent it to Jerry. and told him, this is a dollar bill that I keep for my friends who are in desperate straits and need help. So I told him also that I used to have 2 of these dollar bills, but an ex-friend didn't return his. So that put the fear of God into Jerry, so he mailed it back to me in a few weeks along with some Mexican coins for interest. We've enjoyed many times with Deanna and Jerry. One of I remember is in my favorite spot on this planet, which is on the St. Joe River in northern Idaho, a favorite campground of ours. We used to take our boat up the river and then camp in the boat. So they met us there one weekend in their gold-colored Chevy pickup truck and the sliding camper. And so we enjoyed the whole weekend there together with them. And then we've had numerous luncheons at their house and some at our house, and a lot at Mark's house, and dinners that we enjoyed their company with. All of these events add up to a lifetime, I guess. But when you get to my age, a lot of people my age start to think of those events as golden memories. And they are indeed memories of a time when the sun was warmer, and the sky was bluer, and the grass was greener. Thank you.
Sun was warmer? Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody else want to come forward? Yeah, Harry? I'm going to make you come, these two.
I'm going to pick up on the last 17 years of our life. We'll start with Trilogy Singers. We was in the process of practicing, getting ready for the winter. And lo and behold, this couple came in from California. And during the rehearsal there, they said, well, we got a couple here that's going to do some dancing along while we sing. And so Jerry and Deanna decided, well, I don't guess they decided, they kind of had to dance along with what we were singing that particular show. And so I think it went well. We're still around. And they didn't run us off. They still let us sing in Trilogy after that. Another area that I would touch on, Jerry and I, and Deanna and Anna, stayed together pretty much in different activities that we went on. He would take us off into Snoqualmie, get up there fast and say, well, we can't go any further, so we'll just stop off at this place to eat. And that particular morning, that was about 10, maybe 11. We sat there, they brought the breakfast to us, big plate. Jerry said they'll need the whole thing. I said they'll need about half of it. And I brought the rest out home. Now the other area that we worked with during that was with the VA. We had several visits down there, different appointments. He would have one in one place, I would have one in another place, and we would run up and down the halls there, trying to find each other after we got through it. I remember one time I sat there for 3.5 to 4 hours, waiting on the appointment. Jerry sitting there with me. Come to find out that they didn't have me on the list. They had called, supposedly called and canceled the appointment. They failed to inform me of it. So after that, they finally worked me in about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we finally got to see the doctor. So that's some of our areas. They have did Bible studies together. We have did meals together. We have enjoyed this family. And we still have memories of it, of them and Jerry. Just about every day when I look around the house or walk around outside, he seems to be walking with me.
Thank you, Harry. Harry told me he was a little worried about speaking because usually Anna tells him when to quit. So he was worried about that just a little bit. I do have a little story about Harry and Jerry. Harry one time was in the hospital at the VA, and needed somebody to pick him up, and Jerry called me up and said, hey, why don't we both go together and we'll pick Carrie up at the hospital. And I said, well, I don't exactly know how. Do you want me to put it in my GPS? And he said, no. Jerry said, I know how to get there. I know how to get there. So, you know, we're riding along, and Rainier's out, and I said, look, Jerry, there's Mount Rainier. Isn't that cool? And he said, I can't see it. I'm legally blind. I thought, wow. Anyway, we're going to turn it now over to the family. And if some of you friends, if you have other memories you'd like to share after church or after the worship service while we're eating, that would be a great time. So I think, Brent, you're coming on up. You want to come up? We'll get you up here. There you go. Take advantage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brent Hamilton. I'm Jerry's youngest son, and I want to introduce the family actually today. And one of them is right over there on that table. That's Rob. He's the middle brother, and he's here virtually. So he's actually FaceTiming throughout this whole thing. So if you want to go talk to him, just go over there to that table. And then Mark, my older brother here, is right up front. Of course, Deanna. You all know Deanna. And I'm going to actually do a little interview kind of question answer with her so she can do some sharing time. But of course, Marianne, she will share as well. Marianne is the surviving sibling, Jerry's younger sister, and you already met her husband, Les. And then over here I've got my son Evan, Sydney right next to Evan, and then Mark's daughters, Lauren and Alexis, and the boyfriend Mac. And then we also have, back in the corner there, we've got Deanna's brother, Larry, and my cousin Mitch next to him. They were nice enough to drive over from Spokane today. And somebody else, I could introduce you all because you're all very important people in Jerry's lives and our lives. I'm sorry, and then, of course, Kathy. Yeah, there's always a person sitting next to you so close that you forget to announce. So it's my lovely wife, Kathy. I appreciate all of her support throughout this as well. Beyond that, I wanted to just ask a few questions of my mom, Deanna, and I'm going to, actually I'm going to grab my phone so I have this written down. All right. So, I just thought it'd be fun for you to talk a little bit about your life with Jerry. And starting with, I wanted to ask you how you two actually met.
Okay, well, we were in a college class in a large auditorium, and we both sat in the front row, but we, of course, didn't know each other. We were at one end and the other end. And a guy came over next to Jerry, and he said to me, see that guy over there? He really likes you. But he's too shy to say it. And Jerry doesn't have a shy bone in his body. If you knew that, you'd be in trouble. And then he came to Jerry, of course, and said the same thing about me, that girl really likes you. So afterwards, we met and started going together. And later on, that guy said, well, I didn't mean for you to take it seriously. It's just a joke. So anyway, we were married in 1958, and we were teaching at the Air Force Base at Fairchild, and then we moved to Hawaii, and we had a lot of fun there. Our co-workers were so good to us. They gave beach parties in our honor and took us crabbing at night. I'll never forget the moonlight night we did that, and that was so nice of them. I taught at a lower grade, the first grade actually, and we had an open patio or lanai next to our classroom, and mine was next to the cafeteria. So at night, the mice would come over from the cafeteria to my room, and I'd see them, and I told the janitor, if you don't get rid of them, I'm not coming to work tomorrow. So they were usually gone. But we got our first son there, Mark, and our first dog, Edelani, who was a boxer. but I think we should call her a retriever, because we were near a Chinese cemetery, and she would bring us treats off the graves there. And also, she braided the clotheslines around and bring us nightgowns and things off the clothes and leave us presents. She also brought plants lifted out of the pot, and she finally brought some teeth, which, we didn't know what to do with them. How do you go around asking if somebody lost their teeth? So it was pretty funny. We moved back to Spokane because of our family. We wanted our children to meet the family and get to grow up with the cousins and the aunts and grandparents and all. We were married for 62 years, and I would say that in one word, it was just fun. He most of all loved being a father and an uncle, and just enjoyed so much. We both enjoyed, of course, taking our kids on traveling and seeing them grow up and mature into young men. We were snowbirds then for 23 years from California, and so it made a nice life for us. Lots of fun traveling things, music. We did music jam sessions and performances, and so that was fun too.
Okay. So one of the things you said was one of the traits that Jerry had that was the most endearing to you. And what would you say that was?
That was his humor. And I think you all knew about his humor, the sense of fun he had. He loved being funny and surprising people. He would surprise people with a question, like somebody would walk with their dog and he'd say, "Is that dog for sale?" And they'd say, "Oh, well," and then he'd just talk and talk. Or, somebody was all dressed up fancy, he'd say, "Did you get dressed in the dark this morning?" So it was fun, all the good humor, of course.
But he was also very optimistic, and I think that was one of the things you said that was a trait that we all felt. He was super positive all the time. Probably too positive at times. Overzealous at times.
He was very optimistic. When he got a call that tests came back and he had cancer, he said, "Oh, that must be the wrong person's test." Or, "The test was wrong, certainly." He just couldn't believe that he would have a problem with it. So,
And I can attest to that. Many times we go to the VA and they would say, "Those doctors don't know what they're talking about."
right. He loved to be a leader, and he took pride in being in high school he was at Boys State, and in Spokane he was on the Spokane Planning Commission, and lots of school community committees, and he was always seemed to be elected president of whatever we were in. He just was open to it and enjoyed it. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, one of the jokes that he would play was we called the radio joke, which was, he was good at dad jokes, but the radio joke was tell everyone in the room to laugh really hard at a joke that actually doesn't have a punchline. And so everyone would, except for one person, would be in on this joke. They would laugh like crazy and watch the person that was trying to figure out what everyone's laughing about until they would stop laughing. So they would start laughing as well. So that was the radio joke that came up. So Marianne, I think you wanted to share? Yeah, so good.
I'm Jerry's sister, Mary Ann. A couple things Deanna mentioned that bring things to my mind. was talking about their wedding. Jerry always said, it'll be a hot old day when I get married. They were married in August, and it was a really hot day. And another thing she mentioned was his optimism and positive attitude. One time I said, you know, I think I can almost move mountains with my mind. He said, just keep working on it, you will. So, we spent a lot of holidays with them, in fact, all of them. Jerry's least favorite holiday was the 4th of July. Our children's favorite holiday was the 4th of July. My first husband always brought a lot of fireworks. He and the kids would spend the whole day setting up their fireworks display. Buckets of water, every job was assigned, and they had it all arranged, and as soon as it came dark, everybody did their job, and they put on a magnificent display. But Jerry got to clean up everything the next day, so he hated it. When we were just kids, Jerry was quite a bit older than me, and he was in high school, and I was about probably 4, maybe 5, and he was sitting straddled a bench in front of a window at our parents' house, and he said, you know, I'll bet you can't push me through that window. So I just gave him a push, and he went completely through the window, broke the glass, landed on the ground outside. Dad wasn't very happy, so Jerry went to town and got a new window. But we had so many good times with them. We went camping, and we did all kinds of things, went to hot springs, and had a lot of fun. We went to a fun run, walk, and Les went ahead and actually won a prize. So Deanna and I stayed behind and walked very slowly with Jerry, accommodating him. Well, then we got near the finish line, so he raced ahead and got a ribbon for his age group. And there were many more women in the race, so Deanna and I got nothing, and they called us losers. so it's been fun.
Hi, my name is Mark. I'm the oldest son, and I have a few things I was going to read. We reached out to some of the friends that couldn't be here today, and so they sent a few things along, so I thought I'd read those real quick. The first is from Lee Pennell. Lee and Doris were friends of my parents for, 55 years. That's how long I've known their son, Doug. So this is from Lee. It is not often that you have a special lifelong friend like Jared. Doris and I met Jerry and Deanna at St. Paul's in Spokane. And quickly became very close friends. We belong to we belong to thank you, Mark.
Okay. Jerry had a great personality and always had a great smile. Our son Doug and Mark became lifelong friends. When Jerry became a Mass Mutual life insurance representative, he convinced us to purchase multiple policies for our family and business, which we still have to this day. And so we're getting premium checks probably still today, thanks to his foresight. After he lost most of his sight, we continued to stay in touch by phone. We enjoyed traveling with Jerry and Deanna, sometimes with their motorhome. It was fun to visit them at Sunbeam Park, that's in El Centro. Play water volleyball, which Jerry was very good at, probably because he was taller than everyone else, and watch the Blue Angels fly overhead. Jerry was a special friend. We always cherish our memories with him and the entire Hamilton family. So that was Doug's parents, Doris and Lee. And let's see, do you want me to read these other ones here?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Rob.
Oh, you want to do the rest of it?
Okay. So this is 2 pages. All right. I first became aware of Jerry in 1956 when I was a freshman at EWC. That was now Eastern Washington University. There we go. I never actually met or talked to Jerry at the time, as he was a senior and authentically BMOC, big man on campus. Less for his size than his very big and popular and the respect that everyone gave him. I was in awe of him. As life has a lot of twists and turns and surprises, I met Jerry and his beautiful wife Deanna in a pool at Fairmont Hot Springs in Canada 25 years later during a Unity Church of Spokane couples retreat. It was a providential meeting as we immediately bonded over our mutual spiritual path and Jerry's outgoing personality, corny and outrageous funny sense of humor. Over the next 10 years, Jerry became a true soulmate and boon companion as he was smart, practical, funny, always a welcome part of my life and my family. He was a model husband and dad who, by example, taught me to do better at both. As regularly demonstrated, Jerry was also an extraordinary organizer and participant in our church board. His intelligence, ideas, and enthusiasm were infectious and more often than not resulted in positive movement and forward goals met. Jeff, son Jeff, back in the back row there, and his mother and I spent many happy Sunday afternoons together, splashing in the Hamilton swimming pool and walking, hiking, driving around Spokane, laughing and attending movies, concerts, and unforgettable 3 weeks in Israel, Egypt, and the Greek islands. I will always remember how much it meant to me that Jerry treated my young stepson Jeff as one of his family, and after my marriage to Jeff's mother came to an end, Jerry and Deanna were not only the first to embrace my new wife, Annette, but offered their beautiful home for our wedding, and through the years, treated Annette as a very welcome addition to their life. Annette and Jerry both had a silly sense of humor, so Annette always loved any time we were together and spoke on the phone and exchanged emails frequently. Little did I know that the guy who's bigger than life, something of a hero to me at 65 years, would become the guy I would one day proudly consider my best friend. Along with his family, we love dearly, and so many of the other friends Annette and I will always remember and miss very good man Jerry Hamilton. Okay. Does anyone else want to go?
Yes.
You want to say something, Alexis?
So I have both mine and Lauren's because she doesn't want to. So I'll start with mine because I don't know what hers says, so it's a little bit more predictable. I wanted to tell a couple quick stories and then talk about the last time I saw him. So I'm the oldest grandchild, and so I got to spend the most time with him. When, as you guys heard, he brought his motorhome up to our, when they retired and were touring, they brought it to our house. And I don't know who gave us this idea, but we were adamant that they got their morning stretches every morning. And so my sister and I were probably, my sister and I were probably 4 and 2, and we would start at the other end of the motorhome and go racing as hard as we could down the motorhome to push my grandpa's legs up over the back of his head to give him his morning stretches. I don't know who told us that. I feel so bad for his hamstrings, but we were so adamant that that was something that we needed to do every morning. And then it was promptly followed by pancakes with syrup and peanut butter, which was something that Jerry loved and something we had never had before, but now is a staple in our lives. And Lauren and I pretty much can't have pancakes or waffles without peanut butter on them. I wanted to finish by talking about the last time I saw him, which is going to be hard, but I was actually the last person who got to see Jerry in person. And we had a family call to kind of say goodbye and everything because COVID sucks. And I just had this feeling that even though we all thought he was going to be in the hospital for the next couple days and everything, I just felt like I needed to go now. And so I
came downstairs and I told Mac, I was like, I need to go to the hospital now, and I think you gotta drive me, because I don't think I can go alone. And so I went and I got to say goodbye to him, and he was so positive in his last moments. He was just so ready. He was so grateful for the life that he had. I mean, when I walked in the room, the first thing he said was, "Hi, honey, how are you?" And which felt so silly, because he was the one laying in the hospital bed. But that's just who he was. He cared about his family so much, and he was just so grateful for the time that he had here with Grandma. He wanted to make sure that, we held hands, and he wanted to make sure that Grandma knew how much he loved her and how much he was gonna miss her and how he couldn't wait to see her again, and how proud he was of all of our family and grateful of the time that he spent with us. And he said, "I love you," and I told him I'd see him tomorrow because I thought I would. And I could hear him as I was going out of the room. He had told the nurse that the oxygen mask was so silly and he didn't need it anymore, which is just so hilarious, because I'm sure that's probably what he did, is just, he was ready. And he was so peaceful at the end. So I need to share Lawrence, but your screen locked and I don't know how to open it.
I might be able to do it. I'll try. If I start crying too hard, then I'll do it next week. So I wanted to just kind of capture moments that I felt represented our grandpa. So when I think about Grandpa, or Pop Pop, as we used to call him, I think of quirky jokes, peanut butter toast, military stories, like the time he hid the dishes under the porch so he could sneak out for New Year's Eve and watch the ball drop in New York. And they never took the dishes back out, they just left them under the porch. Long afternoons spent on the couch at the Redmond house, listening to stories about our grandparents' teaching days in Hawaii. Thinking about him saying, "Over the teeth, through the gums, look out stomach, here it comes." Every time he would eat something or take all of his pills. I loved always hearing him tell the story about Alexis refusing to get in the pool because it was too wet, too wet. He thought that was the cutest thing. I think about how he always made me feel important and always took us seriously at every age. He would listen to us and talk to us like we were adults, even when we were 8 years old. And I feel like that was really great for our kind of confidence and feeling respected by him. And I think about the story of how after he proposed to my grandma, Deanna's mom said that, "Oh, you shouldn't marry him because ironing his shirts would be like ironing a tent." Because he was so tall, everyone thought that was so funny. I think of foot rubs. He had special foot rubs that he would teach us how to do. Swimming in the pool, he would pull up his feet to his chest, so you'd see just his feet and just his head sticking out, and he'd say, "Look, I'm a tiny person." Or he'd say, "What do you call a man who swims and doesn't have any arms or legs?" "Bob." Just funny dad jokes. I think about songs strummed on a ukulele. Okay, there it is. My memories of my grandpa are sweet, full of music and laughter. He always made a point to remind us that family comes first, and I will always value that. I miss him dearly, but it was his time. And I'm so proud of my grandma and all of the strength she has shown and has really stepped into leading the family. So we miss him every day, but he's with us, and it was his time. We're not sad for him, we're just sad for us. So. Thanks. Whose phones are these? Okay. Anyone else?
Daughter-in-law.
Sorry.
No problem. So I was just thinking about a few things about Jerry, and I'm sure this is not a surprise, but Jerry loved to be the center of the room on the right. I remember he led a parade as Uncle Sam. I can just picture him now doing that. He and Deanna sang "Baby It's Cold Outside." I remember that was so fun. to a group, and he would tell his stories, and every time it was magnified. It was all about how I went to school walking uphill both ways, right? There was always some crazy story. But Jerry was a really good listener. He always wanted to hear, tell me what's going on in your life, right? He wanted to know every nitty-gritty detail. And he'd give his advice, but every day he'd say, I want to hear an update. If it was something super exciting, he wanted to hear an update twice a day, right? He just loved that. Jerry loved to be the chief, right? He was the family leader. And you mentioned, I remember when Jerry was losing his eyesight, he still wanted to tell you directions when you're driving, no matter what, so I just love that. Most of all, Jerry loved his family, right? He'd defend them right or wrong, that's what he was there for. He loved Deanna. They were tied at the hip, right? He'd help you put your shoes on or do different things. You'd count out pills for the week. They'd sit there and chop and prep food even when he's losing his sight, which is amazing. Jerry loved his boys, right? He was always their greatest, biggest cheerleader, always wanted the best for them. As a daughter-in-law, Jerry and I, well, we took a little time to get to know each other and figure each other out, but after 30 years, we really found that rhythm. He loved my cooking, and I loved his advice. We just had this relationship. And Jerry's no longer here with us in body. His spirit lives on, and a quote from Billy Graham, the greatest legacy one can pass on to their children and grandchildren is not money, but rather a legacy of character and faith.
Well, Jerry was just like an uncle to me. He was my uncle. Thinking about, you know, I had many years with Jerry and Deanna, and want to thank all the times he spent with me. We went on vacations together. All the boys were all close. We're like brothers. Deanna was wonderful with me, and you know, Jerry was just always looking out for me too, and always being really kind. I got bit by the radio joke. I remember that stuff right now. Everybody's laughing. I was like, okay, but it was good. You know, I believe in life after death, and I know that he's looking down, and we'll see him again. But you know, there was many stories that I had with him, going vacations to Arizona and in their campers, Deer Lake, and things we did. It was fun, and I really appreciated all the time that I got to be part of their family, and we all bonded, and it was really a great time. So to a wonderful family, I'm grateful to be part of it, and we'll definitely miss Jerry. So thank you all, and I appreciate it.
So there's one more. I was going to ask, would you read this? This is from Rob.
Well, I wish I would have prepared my own speech, but unfortunately, probably cried too much. So this is from Rob, who's with us on Zoom right now. So my dad was my best friend, someone I talked to almost every day. He taught me not to be rude to people no matter what, and always take some actions towards any challenge. He always wanted to come up with a plan. He helped me many times. Sometimes just talking through a challenge with him, and other times he would help me to see the positive things in life and not get bogged down by the challenge itself. He shared a story with me several years ago about a train and how life is like riding on a train, where people get on and get off. They're part of your life for a period of time, and you enjoy the ride together for that part of the journey. And then they step off the train. People come into your life for periods of time. but the train continues to move forward until at some point you also get off the train. And the people you are with continue on the journey without you. But the memories you have of the time you spent together will always be with you, and the ones you will cherish as you continue on the journey of life. I miss my dad deeply, but I know he fought to the bitter end to do everything he could to help as many people as he could until his body simply wore out. I look forward to when I can see him again, and in the meantime, will take his courage and leadership as lessons for my own life.
One thing you all don't get to see is Deanna's face as she's listening to these stories. And I know Jerry liked to play jokes on other people, and I asked him one time, why is he so into that? He said, well, I love to see their faces, but more than anything, I like to see Deanna's face when I do that. I can see why, as I was watching her listen to all of you share. Deanna and Jerry love to play music, and they love upbeat music, and so listen, we want you to stand up, and we're going to sing kind of an upbeat song right now, kind of as a stretching point. We're getting close here, but let's sing this one. I'm trading my sorrows. If you're able to stand, you don't have to stand. Sing this song. We don't have the baritone ukulele, but he can do it. I'm trading my sorrows. I'm trading my shame. I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. I'm trading my sickness. I'm trading my pain. I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. We say, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Amen. I'm oppressed but not crushed, persecuted, not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. I am blessed beyond the curse, for His promise will do. That's no one's gonna be my strength. Though the sorrow may last for the night, His glory comes in the morning. I'm trading my sorrows. I'm trading my shame. I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. I'm trading my sickness. I'm trading my pain. I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. I'm singing, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Amen. Please be seated. Hopefully you all got a chance to see Deanna and Jerry play together and sing together. That was a beautiful thing. I'm going to turn now just to a few words of scripture. First from Romans, the 8th chapter. And I thought about Jerry's positivity. And I think it came from his faith. The 31st verse. What then are we to say about these things? If God is for us, who's against us? He who did not withhold his own son, but gave him up for all of us, will he not with him also give us everything else? Who will bring the charges against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is to condemn? It is Christ Jesus who died, yes, and was raised, and who is at the right hand of God, who indeed intercedes for us. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will hardship, distress, persecution, famine, nakedness, peril, or sword? No. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. I shared a story one time in one of my messages that Jerry loved. And it's a story, I thought about this story because the last 2 years, I think Jerry and Deanna both lived some of this. It's a story about Chippy the parakeet. Chippy the parakeet. His owner decided that he was going to clean, or she was going to clean the cage. And she got out the vacuum cleaner, took off the attachment, just the hose, just the tube. And she got a phone call. So she put the tube on the bottom of the cage there. And she went to answer the phone, and all of a sudden she heard, Chippy was gone. She hung up the phone quickly, and she opened up the vacuum cleaner, got out the bag, and sure enough, Chippy was still alive. And so she saw all that dust and everything. She thought, what in the world am I going to do? So she took him over to the sink, and she just doused Chippy with a bunch of water and just washed him clean. And then Chippy started to shiver because it was so cold. And she thought, what in the world am I going to do? So she got out her high-powered blow dryer and just blow Chippy away in a way. And poor Chippy was sucked up, washed over, and blown away. And a couple of days later, the reporter called her up. A reporter got hold of the story and asked her how Chippy was doing, and she said, oh, Chippy's not doing so good. He doesn't sing anymore. The good news is Jerry never lost his song. He still kept that sense of humor. Even the last time I saw him, I remember he was down when I saw him in the VA one time, and we were praying, and I thought, wow, Jerry, this is the lowest I've seen him. And after we got done praying, he looked up at me and he said, Brooke, listen, I want you to know, I know where I'm going, and this isn't the end for me. I know death is not the end. This hospital bed is not the end. I believe that God's going to take me to a better place. He knew the Christian story, that the end is never death, that there is a new story after death. And as I was thinking about Jerry, and it's been brought out forever here, but his positive nature, right there in that story. His leadership, he wanted to pass on what he had to others. And even in that hospital that day, he was telling the nurse what she should invest in. He's always trying to give investment tips out there. Leadership, he wanted to keep it going. And then, of course, family. And we've seen that all over here, how much he loved family. And that great positive attitude. And I do want to say something, especially to Deanna. The Spirit of Christ, what is it? Well, I read recently, Richard Rohr in a book, he talks about the Spirit of Christ as this positive energy. That when somebody has the Spirit of Christ in their hearts, they walk into a room and people get stuff from it. There's something that changes in a room. And Jerry was like that, but I'm going to say Jerry and Deanna were like that. And Martin Buber, a great theologian, talks about if God is love, which is what we believe, then God is something we can't possess, we can't hold ourselves. It's only something that we can give to someone else. And God is what is in between two people who love each other. Well, I can tell you this, Deanna, that between you and Jerry, I felt the presence of God. There was beauty and love there. And I want to thank you for that. You were a great witness for 62 years. Wonderful. And I want to just share one more story, not about Jerry, but it's a story that I love, but I think it fits Jerry. There's a story of an elderly gal that called her pastor and said that she wanted him to come over so she could plan her funeral. He said, okay, I'll get over there. And so he went over there, and she said, well, I just want you to make sure I'm buried with a fork in my hand. And he said, a fork in my hand? What in the world? Why do you want to be buried with a fork in your hand? And she said, well, when I was a little girl, in our church, we had a church basement. And we'd have great big meals in those church basements. And they would have wonderful main courses. And then they would take away the plates, and they'd always say, now save the fork, because dessert's coming. And she said, I have had a great main course. She said, but when I die, I can't wait for that dessert. And so that's how we place Jerry and give Jerry back to God, knowing that he's going to have some pie waiting for him, that he's going to have some great dessert. And we are too, by the way, going to have some pie afterwards. So let's celebrate this beautiful gift that we have. And as we lift Jerry back up into God's arms, we will sing On Eagle's Wings, and we'll sing the chorus, but Simon will do the work of the verses. But let's bow for a word of prayer, and then we'll go into that. So let's pray. Gracious and loving God, what a gift you've given us. What a piece of joy. What a positive attitude you've given us. And we ask today that as we lift Jerry back up to you, that you place some of that spirit in our hearts. Help us to take the seeds of Jerry's love and joy, the Spirit of Christ, with us wherever we go. So that when we go, when we leave this place and go on to you, people will have the energy we've left, and to know that we are truly special and they are too. Thank you for Jerry, and we give him back to you now, knowing you have him and hold him. Amen. gonna go out with a little fun song called When the Saints Go Marching In, and then we're hoping to feast, so please join us.